What strange thing have you witnessed or experienced that you cannot explain? I had a friend in high school who I stopped speaking to when she transferred to grade 10. 2 years later, I have a dream that I visited her new school and sat at the back of her math class with her. In the dream, her teacher was tall, brunette with curly hair, and wearing glasses. The next day, I got a message on Facebook from said friend, which is completely out of the blue because we haven't spoken in months. She asks me how I'm doing, and I tell her about the dream. She freaks out and tells me that she sits at the back of her math class, and her teacher fits the description I gave her from my dream perfectly. I have a similar story. A small white ball of light moved to my right, and then just arched up and shot into the atmosphere. Thought it was a shooting star at first. Out walking around the neighborhood late at night with a friend one night, we would occasionally look up at the sky in awe of the stars. I saw a fast moving light, like a meteor, but slower, although much faster than an airplane. Then it made two sharp 90-degree turns, first to the right, then to the left, and disappeared. My friend and I stopped and said, "Did you see that?" to each other. This was in the late 80s, and I can still picture it like it was yesterday. Driving from Cancun to Merida at night, about 10 years ago. Middle of the road, there's a huge pothole, so I swerve to avoid it. About 200 meters ahead, notice a car's got its hazard lights on. It was parked on the side of the road, so I decided to stop and check to see if they needed help. Thought it might have been a flat tire. I parked, approached the car, and as I got closer, I saw what appeared to be two passengers in the back. There was no one in the driver's seat, and those two figures I had seen were mannequins with wigs and faces drawn with marker or something. Just weird to me, at least. Can't rationalize the whole event. I was at a bar and I was talking to some dude I just met, and a girl came up and started chatting us up. Mid conversation, out of nowhere, she puts her hand on her head and says to the other guy, "You are from Brownsville." I don't remember the city name, but it is a small town of like 500 people. The dude looked completely dumbfounded and replied that indeed he was from that city. She said that is weird because once every 2 or 3 years, she has these crazy flashes of information about people she is talking to, but doesn't know personally. It was really weird, and the guy was blown away, and I was kind of in awe. I don't believe in real psychic abilities or anything, but this tested me. Also, it could have just been fake, and she really knew he was from there, but crazy experience anyway. I was sitting in my college dorm room once when the temperature suddenly started dropping like crazy. I turned the heat up as high as it would go, but it just kept getting colder. I took out my winter clothes and started putting them on. This was in like late September, early October in New York, so it wasn't cold outside at all. I was just about to go ask for maintenance when my roommate got back from hockey practice and asked why there were so many police cars and ambulances outside. I had no idea. Later that night, we were informed a girl who had lived in the dorms had died. Everyone who I've told about this says that I felt her death. I was in the same room for 3 years, and that was the only time I've ever had problems with the temperature. A few years ago, shortly after adopting my dog, my then girlfriend and I were getting ready to go out for food, or whatever it was. Right as we were getting ready to go out the door, our dog starts freaking out. He's losing his mind, whining, jumping at us, biting at our arms, and trying to pull us to the living room. We take a few extra seconds, calm him down, say goodbye, and head out. We had a train to catch. Took all of 30 to 60 seconds. As we were approaching the bus stop, about 30 seconds away from the stop, a BMW comes barreling around the corner, jumps the curb exactly where we would have been standing. Had we left when we originally wanted, we would have been standing there, and we never would have seen it coming. To this day, I'm convinced my dog knew, and he delayed us for that reason. He's never had an outburst like that since. Man's best friend in action. Respect. I hear about this stuff where people's dogs predict earthquakes or tornadoes. I've seen it so many times, I'm convinced there's something actually up with dogs. Years ago, my dad's uncle passed away. Years before that, said uncle got my parents a fancy bottle of tequila from Mexico, and it's been on the front room display shelf with a bunch of other dust-covered sculptures and glassworks for at least 12 years. It's out of reach and untouched. No one in my immediate family drinks. On the day of his passing, I'm in the front room reading, and my dad's doing his taxes. We get a phone call with the bad news. My dad continues his taxes while letting me know his uncle passed in a few short words. Not 30 seconds later, and the tequila bottle his uncle got my parents starts playing music. This is odd to me because I thought it was just a bottle, so I ask, "Do we have a music box?" My dad continues his taxes and tells me the bottle has a music box built in, and that was the only reason he kept it. I clarify, "Did you wind it recently?" And he just keeps filing and says, "Nope." And I was ready to leave it at that, but he says, still all casually occupied, "I imagine Uncle David wanted to say goodbye one last time. That is the only time it has made a noise as long as I've been alive. Of all days and times, I never knew what to make of it. It just made me uncomfortable." I came out of a store one day and turned the corner to see a crow trying to read a paperback novel on a park bench. He was perched on the bench, turning the pages with his beak. When he noticed me staring, he hopped away like I caught him red-handed and took flight a moment later. Ended up getting a tattoo of a crow reading a book because the incident left such an impression on me. No one really seems to believe me, but dude, corvids are f***ing smart. I figure it was either imitating a person or trying to harvest the pages for a nest, but either way, strange experience. I've posted somewhere else about this, but it fits. When I was a teenager, we went to our local cemetery to visit our granddad's grave. On the way back to the car, I saw one of those little white crosses on a grave, the kind you put on before you get a headstone. Still horizontal, but the name had fallen off onto the grave. I felt bad seeing it, so I picked it up and put it back on the cross. That night, I woke up, and at the end of my bed, I saw a guy sitting in a chair with his head thrown back. His throat looked like it was cut or something. It was an awful mess. He had brown hair, a blue shirt, and jeans on. I was absolutely terrified and screamed out for my parents. They came into the room, and it had gone. I haven't touched anything in a graveyard since. One time, as I was driving home from work, I turned onto the street where I live and noticed what seems to be more streetlights than I remember being there. I didn't think much of it all at first, but something in me made me do a double take. I noticed that the 3 additional streetlights are not streetlights at all, but lights lined up perfectly in the sky in the distance. Literally, as soon as I noticed this, the lights in the sky began moving slowly and getting closer together. Eventually, they were close enough and formed a triangle. Mind you, at this point, I have managed to park my car in my driveway and I'm standing there staring at them. My parents, who are fairly religious, tend to not believe in aliens, UFOs, or anything of the sort, so I decided to run inside and get them so they can see this for themselves. We go back outside. The lights are still hovering, moving slowly in a triangle. No sound is being made by them. They do this for a few more seconds, and all of a sudden, one of them speeds off super quickly. When I say quick, I mean quick. The remaining 2 continue moving slowly in the sky for a few more seconds, then they literally just vanish. Poof, the lights were gone. I'm not saying it was aliens, but yeah, those were really unidentified flying objects. To this day, we have no idea what they might possibly be. I saw this exactly as you described, right down to them forming a triangle, then one speeding off super quickly. This happened in a park in southeast London around 2003. I always figured it was military planes practicing maneuvers or something similar, but it still creeps me out a little bit. Sitting next to a friend at a camp out / canoe trip, I said, "I just feel like I need to move, like I shouldn't be sitting here." He didn't move, so I laughed a little at myself and kept sitting there. A couple minutes later, my brain pinged me again and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna move. As soon as I stood up, a ball of fire from a flow arts performer on the other side of the camp landed exactly where I was sitting. We were both like, oh. This is actually the weirdest thing, and call me crazy if you'd like. I went to a fair one time, and for some reason my friends weren't with me. Can't recall why. I noticed there were surprisingly few people around and an abnormal amount of clowns. Didn't think anything of it. Got on a ride and got one of those spiral cut potatoes. Took off after. Went home and went to sleep. Next morning, my friend calls me and says, where was I last night? Because my group of friends had a hangout and no one could get a hold of me, nor did I reply. I told him I went to a fair and he asked what fair. Then I couldn't remember where it was. I just said the fair in town. And he just laughed and said something to the extent of, yeah, whatever. Still have no idea where the fuck I went that night. I was driving home one night, a little under a year ago, and the sky turned completely white for about 8 seconds. Mind you, it was completely clear, with no clouds or any kind of moisture in the atmosphere or anything. And it wasn't just one spot either. It was the same uniform, stark white everywhere, from every direction up to the horizon. But besides the sky, nothing else had changed. Everything else on the ground was the same exact shade, coloring, and shadowing as it had been before. It was as if someone had inverted the colors of the sky and only the sky. Then it just changed back. It didn't dim or fade. It just switched to black. Still fucks me up and actually made me go see a neurologist. He said everything was fine with no signs of stroke or aneurysm or anything. Once, long ago, my family was in the front of the house, living room, and kitchen, while I was in the back of the house, my bedroom. I went to the bathroom real quick, which was in between both my room and the front of the house, and was in there no longer than 60 seconds. By that time, all of the furniture in the room had been rearranged, and I mean completely moved from one end of the room to the other. Now, this includes a bed, my grandmother's old recliner, a heavy wooden desk, and some other odds and ends. Now, the part that really makes it unexplainable was the fact that the recliner was blocking the only entrance into the room, and everyone was still in the front of the house. Not too crazy since I don't remember feeling scared, but man, it was the weirdest. The most unexplainable part is when you didn't feel scared. It's like Granny's ghost reassuring him, "Don't feel scared, I just like it better this way." I once went to Panera with some friends. We got our food and sat down at the table. About halfway through the meal, my friend says, "Did any of you guys notice that pole before?" I look next to the table, and there is a huge floor to ceiling black pole literally almost touching me. I swear it was not there when we sat down, and at this point, I'm freaking out and saying, "We're in an alternate universe." I get the attention of a woman who works at the Panera and ask her if she noticed the pole before, and she looks at it genuinely baffled and says she hasn't. Went back a few weeks later, and I swear to God, it was not there. Still one of the most bizarre things to ever happen to me. This is the weirdest one in here, lol. Ghosts and stuff are scary, but things like this that really challenge the accuracy of your perception really freak me out.